Okay,
Good
here
morning,
we are.
everyone.
Good morning, everybody.
Surprise.
So good to know that everybody is here again. The whole gang.
The whole gang is here.
The whole gang.
Right in the middle of the summer. By the way, not all podcasts go year round. I just want to give
Really?
us a pat on the back.
Slackers.
Yeah, look at us.
There is such demand for the knowledge that we impart on our listenership that they won't let us get a break. It's
I know, it's so true.
We're here to serve, though.
Look, it's surprising we don't do a daily podcast, I'm telling you. We have
Mm-hmm.
so much information to impart that,
Much
you know
like-
what, people are like, please, Rabbi, do once a week is not enough.
much like Moses, we are here to serve.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm telling you.
I don't know. Doing a daily, I have a lot of respect for people who do a daily podcast.
Well, but I guess it must be also partly news.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you doing on a daily podcast?
Yeah, it's a lot of news.
It occurred to me yesterday that I had a story, Rabbi, that you might like. I don't think I told you about. So this is probably about a month back or so. I was traveling somewhere. I was in a Delta lounge, and there was a guy in the Delta lounge rapping tefillin, and I could tell he was one of your Chabad tribe. And so
how could you tell?
Yeah. He did not stick out at all.
He wasn't Amish? You sure he wasn't Amish?
Yeah. Yeah. So he got done rapping, and I went over and started talking to him in a very, very thick Russian accent. And I was asking him, I said, "Oh, are you Chabad?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm not that active in the community anymore, but I'm very committed to the Rebbe." And he was saying how he grew up in the Soviet Union and how much the Rebbe did for his community in the Soviet Union. He came to the States after the fall of in 1989, after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But he was talking about how much the Rebbe had done for his community in the Soviet Union when he was living there. So he said it was really he said, the Chabad community is great. He's like, I'm not that active in it anymore, but
where was he living?
Somewhere in upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, the community is great. I'm not that active, but I do this for the Rebbe because he was such a profound impact on my life and my family's life when we were living in the Soviet Union. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
No, I mean, when we were students, we had heard, and we knew that the Rebbe was very involved with Soviet Jewry. He had opinions about Soviet Jewry, spoke about Soviet Jewry. Being a Soviet citizen himself, of course, made it even more special. Chabad and Lubavitch, has its roots, in the Soviet Union. So the Rebbe was very, very active. I could just tell you one little story. When I was a younger man living in Boston, I would deliver matzah around Pesach time to several professors. One of them was Uri Ranan. He was a professor in the law and diplomacy at Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, Tufts and Harvard combined. And he was telling me that one of his earlier career moves, he was part of the UN delegation to the United Nations. And in the early 60s, they had a yechidus, they had a private conference with the Rebbe. The Rebbe brought up the Skolena Rebbe, who was another Hasidic Rebbe living in Romania at the time. And the Rebbe asked them what they were doing about this, how they were helping him. And this caught them, of course, completely off guard. I mean, this is the United Nations delegations. They had known about the Skolena Rebbe. He was in prison in Romania. And the Rebbe was telling them that, what he gets for breakfast, what he gets for lunch. And Rebbe was telling him all of these details. And they walked out of there and they said, how? How? I mean, how is this man that's sitting in Brooklyn, New York, doesn't have a team of Mossad agents, he doesn't have an intelligence organization, he doesn't have anything. I mean, he's sitting there, a Hasidic Rebbe, and he's embarrassing us, the whole United Nations delegations that has the whole apparatus of the Israeli government behind it, or has the whole apparatus of Mossad, the Israeli intelligence community, contacts in Romania. And yet they were stifled, and the Rebbe was telling them, details about what was going on in Romanian prison. It just blew his mind. It just blew their minds. How he was able to do this. How he was able to, I don't know. And I still don't know, but the Rebbe definitely had contacts throughout the world, was very active in sending, tefillin and mezuzahs, but it was kind of dangerous to really communicate with the Rebbe during the Cold War because the Soviets kept an eye on him. I mean, there were even rumors that there were spies, KGB spies in 770, listening to Farbrengens and this and that, etc., etc. But everyone knew that the Rebbe had a big influence on Soviet Jewry. Anyone that traveled there. Benjamin Katz was a Chabad Chassid who was sent by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him, please don't write anything down. All of the things that are going to go on is I want you to remember only by heart. Don't write anything down because they're going to check you when you leave, and
right.
All the notes you may write something down about somebody could get them in trouble. And but again, he spoke very little about the mission, but he did say a few of the little details the Rebbe was telling him, to do, and how to act and where to go and what to say. So we know that the Rebbe was a very, very strong proponent of not antagonizing the Soviets. I mean, what was big in the 70s was these demonstrations.
Oh, right.
Big demonstrations for Soviet Jewry, student struggle for Soviet Jewry, SSSJ, who planned these huge, major, demonstrations against the Russians. Rebbe was very much against those. He always felt that diplomacy, quiet diplomacy, and doing it that way would yield much better results. They didn't listen to him, and many times Rebbe was frustrated because he said there was already a deal on the table, to release 150 families, and then, of course, they organized demonstrations. The Soviets pulled back. They negated the deal.
Interesting.
Actually, on that topic, you made me remember one of the important parts of the story here is that he didn't know he was Jewish until he came to the States.
Wow.
That his parents never told him. And remember, we interviewed remember the CEO of Club Z a while back.
Yes. Yeah.
And when she was saying when she went to get like a license or something when she turned 16 in Russia, they said, "Oh, you're not Russian, you're Jewish."
Right.
And so he came to the States, and then his parents told him when he got to the States he was Jewish. And then a lot of these things in his life started to sort of make sense, that his mother would never eat meat. And she would tell him, "Oh, I have like a allergy or upsets my stomach or whatever." Then they came to the States and she started eating meat. And he said, "I don't understand." He's like, "What's different about the meat?" And he said, "We couldn't get kosher meat in the Soviet Union, so I just wouldn't eat it."
Wow.
And like special celebrations around his 13th birthday, he didn't understand what was so special about his 13th birthday, and like those types of things. So when he got to the States, that's when his parents he learned from his parents about what the Rebbe had done for them while they were there.
Isn't it crazy to think that was happening during our lifetime?
Yeah, I mean,
like
it's
I was
crazy.
alive.
It's crazy to think of how dangerous it was.
I know.
Just how very dangerous it was just to want to live as a Jew.
Yeah.
I mean, forget about the anti-Semitism, the regular, day-to-day anti-Semitism, but just to be able to live as a Jew, to put on tefillin, to go to shul on Shabbos, even though there were shuls, but just to go to shul on Shabbos was dangerous. People would be fearful, of those things. To eat matzah, get matzah on Pesach, how difficult, these things were. And like you were saying, in our day, this is not the 1400s in Spain.
Right.
We're talking about the 20th
I was
century.
alive.
In Russia,
Yeah.
it was crazy, and trying to outfox them and trying to bring in tefillin, and that was covered over by who knows what. It was,
and when you went to shul, even if you were brave enough to go to shul, the KGB was obviously taking tabs on who was going there, right? So even if nothing happened at the moment that you went to shul, there was a dossier on you for being religious, or
no question,
whatever.
No question about it.
Just so I understand, because I think people will be curious. The Rebbe himself, who was born and raised in Russia,
right?
But he left. When did he leave Russia?
So he left as a late teenager.
Okay,
I'm assuming a young man, maybe early 20s.
Right.
Because we know,
and he never went back.
And never went back.
Yeah,
he never went back. So again, the early years again, he may have been like Russia, and then he found himself in Leningrad. So
Yeah.
so then we know that at the arrest in 27, when he was like 25 years old, he was in Leningrad. He was engaged to her to the Rebbitzin already. So we know that he was still in Leningrad.
He was in Russia,
you know,
still.
at that time.
Right.
So, you know, probably when the Friedrich Rebbe left, he left, which was
And
probably
then he
in
went to
27.
Poland.
Then they went to Poland, and
Right.
then they got married in Poland. Then they went to Germany,
And
from
then
Germany to France.
Right.
You know, so
Yeah.
he must have been in the mid-20s or late 20s when he left Russia.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's appropriate to mention that his father, who had been the chief rabbi of one of the cities in Russia,
Dnepropetrovsk,
who was arrested and then sent to far away,
to Kazakhstan,
Almaty, right? And he
never
died
saw me.
there.
You know, never
They
saw
never
me.
saw each. Well,
Yeah.
that's a tragic story. And his mother was sent with him. And we always learn the famous story that his mother would pick berries in the field to make ink so that the Rebbe's father could write like his thoughts and teachings and I guess letters. Did they exchange letters?
I think they did exchange letters. There were letters exchanged.
Right.
But he was a great Kabbalist, and he would write commentary on the Torah and also on Kabbalah, and she saved it. You know, when she left Russia, she took some books with her, and it got to the Rebbe. And I remember for a while, every Shabbos, the Rebbe would expound on something that his father wrote.
Oh, really?
You know, he would talk about it, and
Wow.
yeah.
It was very painful for the Rebbe, I'm sure.
It was very painful. Another thing, it was when the Soviet Union collapsed. The Chassidim went there to Russia now that it was open and everything, and they got the file on the Rebbe's father. Now that was always a picture of the Rebbe's father, where he was looking like, you know, like a rabbi. He looked like a rabbi, but the picture in the dossier was one that was taken after he was already, you know, older and skinnier and this. And when they showed it to the Rebbe was staring at it for a long time and was very, very emotional, because you could tell that that his father was suffering, you know, while he was in prison. And looking through the file, you know, what went on over there, it was the people that were in the room at the time, you know, and seeing what the Rebbe was very hard. Very
That's
hard.
so sad.
Yeah, it was sad. I mean, just at his own wedding, they weren't there, and
Right.
his mother got out. He did see his mother, because she got to Paris after the war, and then he went to Paris to pick her up. I think it was like 1947, and he brought her back to New York, and she lived to the mid-60s. So she did see him, you know, become the Rebbe, you know, and of course, very proud of him. But his father, he never saw after he left. And,
yeah.
You know.
It's
yeah.
On that note.
On that note, so we're talking about parenting.
Well, I
the
know.
Rebbe's parents.
Did we want to say something about the holiday coming up, or should we go straight into our
let's
topic?
go to the parenting, and if there's time left over, we'll go.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did a couple of episodes recently on more of, instead of like biblical text or Jewish law, really about
Because
how to
we're
live.
experts in everything.
Yeah, we're experts in every
Just
topic.
ask us. Next week, it's going to be about nuclear physics. We'll be talking about the difference.
So, right. I wouldn't even know. I mean, you might as well say we're doing it in Chinese, because I wouldn't even know. But we talked about dealing with aging parents in an episode that we got a lot of good feedback about, and people said it was very helpful. But we are now going to talk about dealing with adult children and how being a parent to adult children has its challenges and its wonderful parts, but also I think a lot of people feel that there are big questions around it, and we thought it'd be a good opportunity to address some of them.
Why? Because anybody here have adult children?
Yes.
Among us? Oh, okay.
Well, you and I.
It's not Jay.
I know.
No, not Jay. Not yet. Not yet. Soon.
But
not yet.
You're kind of in a tough situation, although you're lucky because your daughter seems like a very good girl. But teenage girls are not easy to raise.
Yeah. I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky.
Yeah. But I think I want to start with just saying, because I mean, I'm your adult child. And I have adult children now, but are you surprised at parenting adult children? What has surprised you the most, would you say?
What has surprised me the most? That's a good question. Off the top of my head, without really thinking through it in great detail, I'm going to say that the amount of need that adult children have still for their parents is shocking to me. Not shocking me, but surprising. Not shocking, but surprising. I mean, we always said like children are children, and till forever we're all children, forever. But the amount of need that an adult parent still needs from their parents is something, because we think to ourselves that once you hit a certain age, number one, maturity sets in. And then if you're lucky enough to get married and have children yourself, then of course experience comes in,
Right.
With that. So with maturity and experience, and you're growing older, and the parents and the grandparents are growing older, you would think that the middle section, which we're going to call the children, are going to be self-sufficient. But you see how much they need their parents, even though they're already in middle age.
Yeah.
They're still calling and asking for advice and needing to know things, and et cetera, et cetera.
That's
So I would say
interesting.
that would be the number one most surprising thing, that you would think that it's a game over, that, you know
Right.
what, they hit a certain age, whether it's 40, 45, 30, whatever, the certain age, they don't need us anymore, but it's not so. I find as I'm getting older and my children are getting older, maybe they're just nice to me, but no, but they're still calling and asking advice, and and working things out themselves.
Interesting. So, and Jay, you could jump in anytime, but I think one of and obviously we could spend a lot of time talking about how wonderful it is, but people want to hear answers to some of the problems they have. So I'm jumping into sort of the negative parts of this, even though
Yes.
we could, there's
Yes.
amazing parts about, most of it's amazing, but one of the biggest challenges is around boundaries and parents not knowing when to step in, when to step out, how to deal with, watching your child make choices that you think are bad. What do you tell people about boundaries with adult children?
It's an excellent question, and I would say no one shoe fits all. I mean, this is an individual question, for parents and children to work out themselves. Number one, it takes, I would think, a lot of common sense on the part of the parents, just to understand and know their child and realize that their child is not them. Even they're raising their children is not in the same milieu that you raised your children. Their circumstances are not your circumstances, and even to the point of their values are maybe not your values. I mean, you grew up in a certain locale, in a certain milieu, in a certain age, surrounded by a certain culture, and that formed you. And maybe your children grew up in a different age. Oh, no, not maybe. Your children definitely grew up in a different age, maybe in a different locale, and maybe in a different culture. So you have to begin to realize that, number one, they have formed their own opinions, their own ideas, their own thoughts. So that in itself is pretty hard, to swallow. That, because you envision your kids doing what you did,
Right.
or if you're a total loser, you're envisioning your kids to do exactly the opposite of what you did, and to do something else. And it's hard to see that your kids, are not following in your path, like not doing what you're doing, or not doing what you expected them to do, or on the contrary, they're doing exactly what you did, and you see that, oh my gosh, they're going to fall into the same, pit that you fell in. So, with this thought in mind, the number one most important thing that a parent can do is have to have some common sense, to sit down between the husband and the wife and say to themselves, listen, it's not going to be exactly what we planned out to be. When we were young, we thought we're going to have X amount of children. Each one of those children is going to win a Nobel Prize, going to win a Grammy, and is going to go on to, to cure the world of cancer. Okay, every one of them is going to be a superstar, a celebrity. Every one of them is going to be the best, top of their field. Okay, it never turns out that way. I mean, if you're lucky.
Well, except for me. I mean,
Yeah. I'm saying if you're lucky, your children are successful. Forget about winning the Nobel Prize or
Right.
curing cancer, anything like that. That's number one. So there already comes in a little bit of disappointment. But if you're smart, I mean, and you have common sense, you understand and you realize that your goal is to either give opportunity and guidance. That's your goal. To give them the opportunity, meaning, give them a good education early on, make sure that their habits are well formed, make sure to teach them the importance, of community, of sharing, of health, of wellness, taking care of themselves, all of these things. And then, and being like kind of like the rudder, on the boat, like trying to guide them slowly but surely. So when you're like, they're teenagers, you have more influence on them. When they're the adults, less. So I think that common sense plays a big, big, big role. So let's take a scenario, okay? You and your wife sit down and you see that, you're are just, I mean, they're raising their child and are too permissive. I mean, they're not being. So what do you do? So of course you have the full right and the full to go over and to make suggestions, to say, hey, you know what? Look, the way you're doing this is not helpful. But at some point you have to realize, ad kan, this is the boundary line.
Right.
You've done it. You've said it. Now you're encroaching. And encroaching.
1 second. Wait, pause for a second. Because I think some people will say, should you even say it the first time? Like, do you think that if you notice something that your children are doing that you disagree with, that you should say something?
I can't see the deficit in this. If it's done in a respectful manner,
Okay.
any time that you're going to go out and criticize somebody or make suggestions or whatever it is, it has to be done with the understanding that it's coming from a loving,
Right.
caring
Okay.
place. If it's criticism for the sake of criticism, then it's never going to be accepted.
Right.
The Torah tells us words that come from the heart will enter into the heart. If they're not coming from the heart, if all you want to do is just criticize them, then be quiet.
Right.
I mean, then there's none. But if you think that you could be helpful, I don't see the deficit of coming and making some suggestions and bringing up the topic in a loving and caring and respectful manner.
Okay.
Not in a screaming manner, not to
Right.
say, you're such an idiot.
Right.
Look what you're allowing your kid to do. But in a respectful manner, and point out why you think this way in a rational manner, in a logical way. And then you have to let them do their own thing, because ultimately the decision is theirs. The grandchildren are not your children. It's their children. And therefore, all you can do is make suggestions. And again, the suggestions have to come from the right place.
Right.
If your child feels that it's encroaching, so most of the time I would say that parents and children are okay, because the child knows, look, my mother is like, she's always going to give us advice, she's always going to tell us what to do. This is the way we grew up, so you know what, I learned to live with it. In-laws are very different. In-laws have to tread much more carefully, because the son-in-law or the daughter-in-law are not your children. They don't know you as well. They don't understand nuances as well as your children do. A snide remark or a critical remark who you think is funny or smart may come off as mean. So you have to be more careful. If you want your son to be happy, you're going to treat your daughter-in-law well. Otherwise, your son is not going to be happy.
I think it's a really important point that you made about
something happened.
Hold on a second. What happened?
Nothing. All of a sudden turned black and white.
But is it okay now?
I mean, I see myself, but
Okay.
it went from color where I was looking good to black and white.
I think the camera switched.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
I think it's a really important point that maybe we could edit that out, by the way. Let's start again at 24:30. Okay. I think it's a really important point that parents shouldn't be scared to give their adult children feedback, but it has to be done in the right way. I mean, that's a very people are nervous about that because the kids don't often react well. But I think if you do it in a loving, kind way that shows that you're doing it because you want the best for your child.
I would go even back further. Forget about giving them advice on parenting. Go back to the time when they were still your children.
Yeah.
And how you dealt with them.
Right.
Now, when a child is young, a child knows that the parent has all the power in the world. Okay, you have very little power. When you're 5 to 10, you have very little. The only thing that you could do is make decisions. Say yes or no. That's the only thing that you can possibly do. You can't leave the house. You can't get a job yourself. You can't do anything. Okay, fine. As you grow older into teenage years, that's when the relationship becomes fraught.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because now you're developing your own personality. You're becoming your own person. You're starting to make your own decisions. You're starting to get your own values, and now how your parents are treating you. If you have a good communication and a relationship with your parents, it's going to carry over.
Right.
So if you, as a teenager and as a young adult, know that your parents are looking out the best for you, that they care about you, and not that they're living their lives through you, and they're not your friend. All right? Mean that they're a parent and they're watching over you because they love you and they want the best for you. Now, you may disagree with them and you may disregard their advice. That's okay.
Right.
This is the United States of America, and we have a right to do that to our parents. But understand that your parents are there from a place of joy and a place of kindness and a place of generosity. If during your time of, when you were a teenager and you've been clashing with your parents, and this clash continues to your young adulthood, then what do you think the relationship is going to be after you get married?
Right.
My parents are so bothersome. They're so meddlesome. Everything I do, they're never happy. You get one B and they're all over you. You do this and they're all over you. You do that, they're all over you. So what do you think is going to be the relationship after you get married?
Yeah.
So first of all, you're going to think to yourself, the kid is going to think to themselves, hallelujah. You know what? I'm under the chuppah, and you know what? This is a jailbreak, because I'm not going to have to deal with these old folks anymore. I have now my husband, who's going to be my Ezer Kenegdoi, my helper, and together we'll manage. So what do you think the reception is going to be on their part? So I would go even further back. So if you're smart, you'll start developing a good relationship with your kids while they're teenagers, and they're young adults into their adulthood, and then later on, when your child feels safe and knows that there are boundaries that you keep, and that that they understand that what you're telling them is from a place of love and caring and compassion, and only wants the goodness for them, and not because you happen to be worried what the neighbors are going to say. Oh, you know what? Look at that. My neighbor's going to find out that my son got a C on his geography test. I'm going to be the laughing stock of the community. So I'm going to hide it from them, and I'm going to tell them that I don't even have a son. Who, son? What? I don't have a son. Like all that. Then, okay. So as you sow, so shall you reap.
Right.
The way you put into it, because you were selfish and you put your needs and your identity and your ego before your child. So,
how do you, Jay, you're raising a teenager right now. How do you deal with that? Like, do you think about like not being her friend or not being her, or worrying about what other people are going to say, and really trying to parent from a place of like respect, I guess?
Yeah, we never really cared about what people thought particularly. Like we had very strict rules around social media and like tablet usage and phone usage, and she's still not on social media. Like we still don't allow social media. So we were pretty strict about those types of things. To me, I think the earlier you start to lay those rules down, the easier it is later. I think about if we had started off saying, yeah, you can use the phone and the social media, and then years later came back and said, okay, now you can't do that anymore because whatever. I think it would have been almost impossible to claw back at that point. But those rules have always been the rules. It's just one example, right?
Right.
And so it's never really been a discussion. It's never really been that that difficult to manage those types of
She
those
doesn't
types of
think you're her
things.
friend.
I think in some ways she does, but I think she knows it can't always be that way. I think that's the thing. I think that when people say you're a parent, not a friend, I think it's situational. You know, I mean, sometimes your kid needs a friend and things aren't going well.
That's true.
And maybe it's things where they're not comfortable talking with their friends, or maybe the issue is with their friends, right? And so sometimes, yeah, you do need to be a friend, you know, or at least friendly, but, you know, really be a friend to your kids. And other times, no, like this is not a friend time. Now is the time to be the parents. And so I think you just have to have different modes that you go through depending situationally on what the issue is.
I think that's a good point. I think my parents did a good job at that. Like
Yeah.
there were times that we had fun and it was laughing and we were gossiping.
Right.
But then there were times, even now, I'm saying at 40, almost 46 years old, there's still times that I feel like my parents parent me, you know, or say something to put me in my place. And my mother especially, I think. But yeah, I think you do too sometimes.
It's different between being friendly and a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we always try to make the house fun,
Yeah.
and and joyful and all of that. That's great. That's great. But the child needs to understand that there is a line, that there are friends that you go out with and you have fun with, and you bond together with them. And the parent, even though that you're friendly with your parent and you can joke around with your parent, but there's a line that you don't cross, and the parent has to realize that. My sons, when they grew up and be 20 years old, they weren't interested in me coming along with them, with their friends, wherever they were going. I mean, I don't know, but they were not interested in me jumping into the car and go, "Hey guys, come on,
Right.
let's go to O'Malley's for a beer." And they'd go,
Let's
yeah,
not.
yeah. I mean, could you take my sons? Can I take my sons to O'Malley's for a beer? Yeah, I did a few times. I had beer with them, but not jumping into the car with their friends.
Right.
They're friends with their friends, and your friends are your friends, and there's a certain boundary that you don't.
But
you don't
sometimes
cross.
parents don't realize that actually.
No.
There are parents who get offended.
That's the problem. See, that's where when I keep saying you're not a friend,
Right.
is where that boundaries is we've clouded it.
Right.
It's not clear, and and when your kid thinks of you as a friend, they think that they can get away with a lot more because you can talk to your friends in a manner that you wouldn't talk to your parents, right? I mean, where did you find out all about the secrets of life and when the realities of life? What's I say? The facts of life. That's what the thing. Where did you find out the facts of life? It wasn't from my father. I promise you. My father, a Holocaust survivor that said 7 words in 11 years, did not sit me down one day and said, "Hey, I'm going to teach you about the birds and the bees and the gunners and the trees." No. Where did you find that out? You found it out in the backyard school. When one of your friend's brothers who was older
he knew,
and you went, "Nah, it's not true. It's not true. My parents would never do such a thing. It's impossible." All of that stuff. So that's friends. That's friends. Your parents are not just not this. It's not the same way. But that does not mean that there can't be an incredible bond and a friendly bond, and should be, and a loving bond, and have fun. With your kids. That's for sure, because that is definitely going to carry over into adulthood. Now, going back into adulthood, the parents need to understand that no matter how well they raised their kid, I mean, they were the greatest parents and they did everything for their kid and all of that, still, kid is an individual. Now, we can do the best job that we can possibly do. You read every single book, written from 1965 to 2025, every child book, and you wrote it down. You made a chart. You made a flow chart. You followed along exactly. You fed them, cereal till they were 6, and then you moved on to this, and you did that. Then you took them to baseball, and, you sent them to summer camp that you went to visit, and, that. And every birthday you got them something. You could have been the best outstanding parents ever, and your kid's going to turn out to be a creepy kid. I mean, and your kid is just going to be a creep, and you're going to think to yourself, laying away in bed, why? I mean, why? I mean, I did everything for this kid. I mean, I followed every rule in the book. I was loving, I was caring. You know, our house was always open. Their friends were here. And my kid is an absolute creep. You know, like not a nice kid and did this, that. And you think to yourself, that's something that's out of your control.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, those are decisions that your kid is making.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's no reflections. Now, it could be a reflection on you. I'm not saying, but you could have done everything right. You could have done everything right. You could have read books. You could have listened to classical music. You could have gone to church every Sunday.
Right.
You could have done everything great. And your kid turns out to be a creep. That's the way the world works, because we have a thing in our makeup called free choice, and your child is making decisions upon what they see is right for them. So we can't always beat ourselves up. But on the other hand, when you're a parent, your child is going to be independent, so you need to make sure that you and your wife understand that there are boundaries. That, you know what, you thank God your kid grew up to be a good kid and they're good parents. Nothing. The fact that you may not like everything that they do, okay, but that's not your business.
So
I mean, it hurts.
right.
It may hurt, but it's just not. Look, we're talking here in a podcast. We have 6 kids. Right? Some of them are super religious. Some are very not less religious. Some are middle of the road religious. That they grew up together in the same family. We didn't do anything different for any of the kids. Now, did they have different experiences growing up? Of course, they had different experiences growing up. But a lot had to do with who they married, where they live, what they do, and all of that stuff. So those things are out of your things are out of your control. But here in one family, you go with 6 different ways.
Yeah.
Right. So on the other side of the coin, if you're not that the Jewish community would know anything about this, but if you're a kid with a parent who might be a little bit overbearing,
we wouldn't know about that.
Yeah, no. I know no Jewish parents are overbearing on their kids for sure. How do you deal with that situation?
As an adult or as a kid?
Yeah, as an adult.
As
a
an
kid,
adult.
you pack up your bag.
You
put a stick on it.
As an adult.
And you go like a hobo out the door, and you run away.
How many times I packed my bag to run away? Do kids still do that?
Yes, they do. They make it to the kitchen. As soon as they hit the kitchen, they go,
always
"1
running
second,
away.
I'm not going to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich."
If kids couldn't run away then, could you imagine any kid trying to survive on their own now?
No, never. Never. Absolutely never.
Wait, so that was a good question, though. How do you deal with how do adults deal with overbearing
parents? Okay, so number 1, common sense, as I mentioned before. Number 2 is communications.
Yeah.
Communications is very, very important, because you want to come across as a kid respectfully, and you want to have a relationship with your parents. We know that Jewish mothers are, I'm just using, I mean, I know that I'm painting with a broad brush. I get it. But that's we know that Jewish mothers are notorious for being zealous. You know, they're very zealous. Jewish fathers, okay, fine. But, Jewish mothers, are in charge of everything. They know everything, and fine. So communications is a critical tool that you have to have when it comes to relationships. And you have to come across to your parents, again, just like your parents have to be respectful to you and care about you and know that it's coming from the heart. Same thing is true the child to the parent. The child says, listen, I love you guys. I love you, Ma. I mean, there's no person in the world more important to me than you, except for my wife. In all reality, because she's the number 1 thing in your life, and you have to protect her more than you have to protect your parents. But I know I love you guys, and I just want to have this great relationship, but something is not working here, Ma. I mean, you just can't come in every day and start telling us, this is wrong and that's wrong, and cleaning up the house and doing all this stuff. I so much appreciate your help. Believe me, I get it. I'm thrilled that you're able to come here 4 o'clock, but the fact that you come here 4 o'clock every day and start washing the dishes, doing the laundry, and making dinner for the kids is not helpful. I know you're trying to be helpful, and we appreciate it, and God knows that everybody should have a mother like you, and I get it, I understand, but you're not helping us. And if you think that you're helping us because I know you're telling me my wife is too busy and she has this full-time job and she can't do everything. We understand that. We're not 7 years old. We understand that. But what you're doing actually is, even though you're not, but I don't say anything. I'm just coming in. I want to be like the wallflower, just coming in and just doing my few little things. We get it, but it's very, very annoying and it's disrespectful to us when you're doing this. So I'm asking you to please stop. Now, if she doesn't stop, then you have to then you let down the bomb and say, look, Ma, I'm telling you, you're causing tremendous friction within our family, and I can't have that. And if this behavior doesn't stop, we're going to have to do something drastic, and I don't want to do it to you, but I'm going to have to say to you, please don't come by, and if she doesn't get it, if the mother does not get it at this point. Now, this, of course, what I mentioned is an extreme case, of course, of being totally overbearing, but it's not only about actions; it's about the way you speak to each other. It's the way you confront
it's also
an
passive
issue.
aggressive.
It's it's the anger issue. You're angry and this and that. We all understand. We're adults here, and we all purport to be rational, reasonable people. So if you have something to say, please say it. Otherwise, don't say it. Don't say it. And there's a lot of the things I think is better kept under wraps, because you're not going to find a solution to this. I mean, if you had a solution and said, hey, you know what? I'm going to pay for a housekeeper to come in. Would that help you? I'm not going to come myself, but I'd like to pay for a housekeeper to come in 3 hours a day just to help you at dinner time. Would that help you? Make suggestion. They may say, yeah, you know what? That would be so helpful. That would be great. We'd really like it. Okay, so there's a solution. But at some point, you have to back off. Because if you don't back off, they'll back you off. And if they don't back you off, they're not going to last very long.
It's such a hard thing because parents, I'm saying it for myself right now, like I'm watching my adult children go through, I mean, they're new adults, but still, making life choices and for jobs and now with marriage. And I take it personally, right? I can't separate myself from what they're doing, even though rationally I say, that's not my life, right? Like my son took a job last year. I was not happy with the job he was taking. And my first instinct was to yell at him and say, don't do it, and force him to stop. And it took everything out of me to just take a step back and say, listen, he has to live his life. And even if I don't like it, but I think I get to be that way because I come from a healthy place and a lot of people don't. And we're seeing that play out in a lot of families, that parents don't have healthy boundaries with their kids, even from when they're younger. And so it gets worse and worse and worse as adults get older. So here's my question. What can be done when there's already a lot of toxic things happening in the relationship? Is it better to bring in a third person and a mediator? Is it better to confront your parent or your child? How do you see it playing out? Is it where does a rabbi fit into that, by the way, or some kind of other person?
It's a very good question. So I want to go back to what you said before about your son taking the job, because I know the circumstances.
Okay.
The fact you felt more comfortable is because he explained to you in a very logical, rational way why he's taking it and what the purpose in taking this job is.
Right.
He also made it quite clear to you that this is an experiment.
Right.
This is not a lifetime commitment. He's not writing a 20-year contract on this job.
Right.
He's going to try it out. Many of his friends have tried this out. It's completely legal, useful job that many people do. And it's not an easy job. It's in the sales. But because he was rational and and
Right.
calm about it. He did not take this job based just upon the fact that, he had nothing else to do, so this is what he's going to do. You felt much more comfortable. That is why I think many of the issues can be solved in that manner.
Mhm.
He
Right.
didn't confront you and said, you know what, I know you don't like it, I'm taking it anyways. Had he said it in that tone, you would have not slept.
Right. Right.
You would not be sleeping. But because he was saying it in a manner where, hey,
You're right. It
don't
was about
worry,
the
I'm just
communication.
taking it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right.
So now, where does third party help come in? I would say like this: anything that you can't solve on your own, you need a third party.
Mhm.
Okay, just like, for example, take mental health. There's going to be times in a mental health situation when you are going to be able to come to the rabbi or to a friend, explain the situation, and maybe with some good advice and better nutrition, or better, it helps, and you're feeling better. But then there are times when you actually are going to need to go to a psychiatrist.
Mhm.
This is a serious issue that no rabbi, and no friend, can help you with. I mean, you got a serious, mental health issue. Same thing is true in relationships.
Mhm.
There are times when a rabbi could help. Now, the rabbi who's not a trained, now there's more and more rabbis are getting trained, in
Pastoral,
therapy,
yeah.
and in couples therapy, and then taking courses for it, and that is. But most rabbis are really coming from experience.
Mhm.
They've seen it, they've heard about it already. They read about it, and if they're a person with a little bit of common sense, they
Yeah.
can they can help you along. So if that works, Gamzula Tova, all the
Good.
better.
Right.
But it's always, there's no question that a Seilach Harav, the Torah tells us that one should have, a teacher and a mentor in their lives. Uknei lechachaver, one should have good friends in their lives. And if the situation can't resolve itself between the parties and the parents and the children, a third party should be brought in.
Mhm.
There's no question about it. And many times a perspective from the outside will help,
Mhm.
knowing full well that the friend is not coming from a place of criticism for criticism's sake. And he's
Yeah.
not telling you, hey, you know what, you should stop doing that to your kids because A, B, and C, or you should stop talking to your parents that. Now, if you feel that person is coming across only because he wants to criticize, so that's going to fall on deaf ears. But
Right.
if you should find yourself a good friend or a mentor that
Mhm.
truly cares about you and cares about your success and wants you to be happy, a third party is an incredible
Yeah.
tool that we don't take advantage of enough here in
Yes.
America,
Right.
because we're very private and we build these big walls around us, and we're not living in a shtetl where everybody knows everybody else's business, although we think we want to know everybody else's business, but we don't. We don't. We live, you go there, especially if you go into the wealthy areas in this country, the first thing they do is they build all these huge walls around their
Mhm.
property so no
Mhm.
one should get in there. And that's not only done in a physical sense; it's also done in a not a spiritual but an emotional sense, where they
Mhm.
block everybody out of their lives and nobody can get in there.
Yeah.
So but a third party I think would be extremely helpful, in solving many of these issues, and understand that many of these issues take work.
Right.
It's not just one time we'll go to a friend and we'll sit down and we'll talk our hearts out, or just, and then next day everything is going to be hunky dory. It takes a lot of work and a lot of discipline, and a lot of things that you're going to have to just bury and say to yourself,
Right.
look, it's not going to get any better. I'm just going to have to live with the situation as is, which is sometimes very difficult to do, to say, oh, this is the best that it's going to be when you had great expectations.
Yeah.
That's why I always go back and saying the parents have to allow their children to live their own lives. You're not living your life through your children. The
Right.
fact that you didn't make it to the major leagues is not your son's fault. It's your fault because you had zero talent. Okay? You were more talented to become a chess player than a baseball player. Let's be honest.
Right.
Okay? The fact that you didn't make it, okay, so you got humiliated that day, in the playground when everybody got chosen, 18 players, and you were number 19, and you were the guy that, you had to run to get the ball when it went into the outfield, way past the outfielders. They said, hey, why don't you go get the ball? You're the fastest
Someone's
runner
living his trauma right
What?
now. Someone's living his
No,
trauma.
no. Thank God it never. But I've seen it.
Yes.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God in heaven that I was not the smartest guy, but I was kind of a decent athlete.
Well, thank God you went to a yeshiva.
I went to a yeshiva, so I
yeah.
didn't have to go like public school. Okay, the basketball game is starting. Okay, who's going? Okay, you, Perlmutter now,
No.
jumping over. But you also have to have expectations. But
Yeah.
because you were humiliated that day, now you're going to put your kid through Little League, and you're going to make
Right.
him go through Little League, even though he hates Little League.
Right.
That's also not helpful and not healthy.
right.
And a lot of parents do that. A lot of parents do that. I remember still when I was working for Dean Witter, they sent us on this course, this lecture to sell insurance. So you had to get your insurance license to be able to sell insurance, because of course it was another one of the other, the bullets in your holster. So when you were trying to get clients, not only could you take their money for stocks and bonds and other things, but you could also take their insurance money as well. We just wanted every penny of yours. The money you put away for yeshiva, the money you put away for your grandmother's funeral. We wanted every single penny into that account. Okay, so we go to this lecture of this guy that's supposed to be this guru salesman. All right, so we're sitting there. There's about 500 of us in the room, literally maybe 400 sitting in the room, and he says, I want to know how many of you are firstborn. Half the crowd picked up their hands.
Wow.
I mean, a huge percentage picked up their hands. He says, yep, that's generally the case, because firstborns are the ones that are mostly going to try to impress their parents. They're the ones that are going to be the ones
Wow.
that the parents are going to be put the most pressure on the firstborn. I'm sorry, Chayleya, telling this. And he goes through a scenario. He says the father takes the kid to Little League. Okay, Saturday afternoon. It's not Jewish. Saturday afternoon, because Jewish kids are supposed to be in shul on Shabbos. So, non-Jewish kid, Saturday afternoon, the father sitting in the stands. The kid gets up. First time at bat, gets a double. Very good. The next time at bat, he gets a walk. Next time at bat, he hits a home run. So right now, he's 2 for 2 with a walk, which any major league ball player would give his right arm to have such a game. Okay, the last time he gets up at bat, he strikes out. Okay, fine. Okay, 2 for 3. Anybody knows baseball? 2 for 3 with a walk is Shohei Ohtani league. I mean, you're talking about Mike Trout league. Okay, I mean, you're talking about the best of the best. Do two. No one does 2 out of 3.
Right.
I mean, 2 out of 3 is you're batting 666. The best players bat 300. That's 3 out of 10. Okay, so what goes on afterwards? He says, okay, now after Little League, everybody goes to lunch. Where are you going to lunch? McDonald's. Everybody's going to McDonald's after the game. Okay. You sit in the car. Okay. The kid is sitting in the car. He's waiting for his father to say something. To get to the first red light, no, doesn't say anything. Get to the second red light, no, doesn't say anything. To get to the third red light, the father turns to the kid and says, that last pitch was high and outside. Why'd you swing? The kid looks at him. Really? I mean, really? I mean, that's the reaction of 2 for 3 with a walk. I mean, the last pitch was high and outside. So now, what do? Your whole life now is built upon always to try to impress your dad. So you got to do everything. So you become a salesman because, that's the way you're going to show the world that you're going to be successful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that dad, he didn't mean bad. I mean, he didn't mean to, he just wanted his kid to go 3 for 3 every day so he can bat 1,000, which is almost impossible. But he was living his life through his kid.
Right.
And you can't, you just can't do that.
This
and
has been my whole life.
What?
This has been my whole life.
Yeah, this has been your whole
Suffering
life. Oh,
with
yeah.
your expectations. I would have been normal, but you had such high expectations because I'm the oldest. Label, you didn't expect anything from Label, the youngest.
Oh.
Just the fact that he woke up every day. Oh, there's your phone call.
There's my phone call to end this discussion.
How convenient.
But that's
one thing that's interesting about the story you told, and I obviously this is obviously I think everybody knew this was going to be the case when you were telling the story about which parent it was going to be, that it was going to be the dad.
Oh,
right.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
It's because now, although you do find now more and more moms on the sidelines, at these games, these helicopter moms, on the sidelines that are just dragging their kid from one thing to another thing to another thing. Your kid's not going to be a ballerina. Look at her. I mean, look at her. I mean, her legs are this big.
I went to ballet.
I know, no, I'm not saying
Wait,
you.
this is
I'm
so
saying-
painful.
No, you
But-
are going to be a ballerina. Sooner or later, Hayley, you will be a ballerina.
Yeah.
But if you look at ballerinas, just look at
I
a
know.
ballerina.
I know.
mean, you don't have to be. You don't have to be
Yes.
Einstein to know that a ballerina weighs 30 pounds. Okay, because the guy has to pick her up and hold her. Your daughter needs a crane. I mean, okay. I mean, I don't want to say it to you, but your daughter needs a little crane to get her up. Okay, all right.
Oh my
So
God.
why are you doing this to her? I mean, she fits into that tutu like I fit into like Michael Phelps's Speedo thing. What are you crazy or something? So sometimes you have to be my
God.
father-in-law had a Paiser Chulim.
Yeah.
You have to wake them up and say to them, your kid has tremendous talents. She really does. She has tremendous talents. Try to figure out what the best way of her to succeed in life without this delusional expectation. You weren't a ballerina either. So what are you forcing her to go to ballet or sports or whatever? I mean, I can imagine my father forcing me to take music lessons. Oh yeah, that would have helped. Because
Yeah.
I got such a good voice. If only I had guitar lessons, I could have been the fifth Beatle.
But we're delusional. We think that they are going to be that one in a million.
But it is.
No, but
it-
you see, your
it-
sons, for example, have this natural talent towards music, have a good
Yeah.
ear. They got it from Baruch. They took lessons. They play the piano beautifully. I wish they
Yeah.
would continue to play
Yeah.
the piano. But that makes perfect sense to me, dragging them to piano lessons,
Yeah,
because it's
that's
good to have
true.
this. It's good to have this thing under your belt. It gave them significance. It made them feel
Right.
good. It gave them this. But to say, hey, you know what, you can take Dovin and say, you know what, you're going to make it to the NBA. You're going to make it to the
No,
NBA because
he's
you love the
definitely
NBA
not.
so much. Let's go. I'm going to spend $10,000 getting you the best coach. Okay,
Yeah.
and then you show up to high school in Yoek, and you're not even the best player in Yoek because you
Yeshiva.
got these freaks, like the I'm trying to think of Danny Weiss's brothers, 6'6", and you're 4'6". Okay, so you got to
Oh,
be
God.
realistic.
It's so much about life is about expectation versus reality. But I think, if I had to sum up everything about adult children and their parents, it really is about communication. I think that's where it comes down. And that's a hard thing. I think about this show. I don't know why this has been in my head the whole time, but everybody loves Raymond. Raymond
Oh,
had his wife and his kids, and they lived in the house across the street from his parents. And his parents were,
his father was okay.
he was also annoying.
Yeah,
And the
annoying, but-
mother was so overbearing.
Right.
And he had to protect his wife all the time from his mother. And you don't see that all the time, right? A lot of times people don't know how to handle that
And
relationship.
he failed many times.
He failed at it many times.
Many
That's what I'm
times
saying.
He failed at.
But that's a real life story. That I see it with my friends. I see it in the community all the time, that people get stuck between their parents and their spouses, or even if you're not married, even in an adult, like a regular adult dealing with their parents. And I think if we just had better communication, we could avoid so many of these issues.
But
I really do.
I'm agreeing with you 100%. But I'm going to reiterate again: your number one person that you need to protect is your spouse.
Right.
You promised under the chuppah, you signed the ketubah, you said in the ketubah that you're going to love and cherish and treat her the way Jewish men have treated their wives since time immemorial, and that has been with tremendous respect. And the Torah tells Adam, this is God's own creation. He tells him, you know what, you are going to have to leave your wife and move on.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Leave your parents.
You're going to have to leave your father and your mother, and you're going to have to find a wife, and you're going to have to attach yourself to her, and you'll make a family. So
Right.
your spouse is your number one concern.
Right.
Now, what happens is you may not like your spouse. You
Right.
did like them at the wedding, but now all of a sudden you don't like
you
them
like your
anymore.
parents more.
So your
Yeah.
parents, you're joining your parents, undermined her. Okay, good luck in your marriage.
Right.
I say to you,
Right.
good luck in your marriage
Right.
if that's the way if that's the way it's going to be. But if the marriage is a solid marriage and you love your spouse and you care for your spouse, they are your number one. Now, that doesn't always mean that they're 100% correct.
Right.
You need to speak to your wife as well and ask her, please, you know what, can you speak a little bit nicer to my mother? And
Right.
you know what, she doesn't need to hear your criticism all the time, and she doesn't like your snide remarks. So you have to be a man too.
Yeah.
Don't be a chicken little,
Right.
where you can't stand up to your wife. And the same thing is true the wife to the husband.
Right.
I say, please, you have to treat my father with a little bit more respect and all of that stuff. And you may not like everything that he does. Okay, but that's the way he is, and he's not changing. Okay, I had this very, very, very difficult case in my office last week. It came in, and we were talking about something about a mother and the daughter-in-law not getting along, and I said, the mother is not changing. She's at 90.
Right.
She's not changing. For the sake of the family, the daughter-in-law, in my opinion, has to be the one that's going to be acquiesce.
Right.
She's younger. She's gonna. She can make the sacrifices. The mother doesn't have to make the sacrifices. She's 90. She says things. Yeah, so she says things. So what? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I mean, that today, if you said that today, are you kidding? But when we were little kids on the playground and you called someone, you fat loser or you stupid nut, why did you let didn't catch the ball? Okay, and then you go, and people would say, grow up, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Today, oh my goodness gracious. Oh my goodness, snowflakes. But I think that I think we've got the point across.
Well, I'll just end with one thing. I think, and not to defend overbearing parents, but I do think that a lot of times younger adults forget that the older adults are just waiting to be part of your life. They just want to be invited. They just want to be there. They just want to spend time with you and your children. And even if you're not married with kids, even if you're single, your parents just want to talk to you, see you. So have a little grace, have a little patience and give them time. And if it needs to be within your boundaries, that's fine. Make up that every Friday at 2:00, I'm going to call my parents and spend a half hour on the phone with them, or make up that every other Sunday we're going to go out for brunch or whatever it is, or every holiday. But I think a lot of times people forget that it's not from a bad place. It's from love. And they just want to spend time with you. And you have to have, again, it's all about having patience and grace for your parents and your in-laws and your grandparents. And
for the parents, I just want to add,
yeah,
Khaled said an extremely important point. If you want to be part of the kid's life, don't start at 40.
Yeah.
Start at 4 months.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
At 2 months, at 1 month. There's nothing we know from research that babies, even days old, feel the comfort, the warmth, the protection of you holding them.
Right.
And the more that kids grow up in a world of safety and love, the more you're going to be part of their lives.
Right.
So don't start at 40 thinking to yourself, once I retire, I'm going to get into my kid's life. Then they don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
Where were you till I was 40? Remember, Cats in the Cradle. Remember that song?
Gosh.
You know what? Always be part of your kid's life. There's always time for another deal later. Your kids, raising them, there's no time later. It's now or never.
Okay. Next episode, we're going to discuss all the trauma from my childhood and what my parents did wrong.
It's going to last. That episode will last 2 minutes.
Oh, really?
That's what it is. There was no trauma, no thinking. She grew up in a perfectly normal home.
Exactly. Well, okay. Thank you very much.
Good stuff,
everyone.
Yeah, I think it was.
And
Thank
we'll
you.
see you next time.